What's up everyone, Michael aka Spiritshard here with an impressions review for Blade and Soul, a free-to-play MMO that's more on the standard side, but it focuses a lot on this action-based combat that's really fast-paced and has a lot of combo moves and stuff like that. It's actually quite fun. It also has a few other interesting things we'll obviously talk about in this video, but just like any other MMO, we're first going to start with the character creation. You do get 2 character slots to begin with. You can expand it with the cash up currency if you so desire. Anyways, so here's your 4 kind of races. You got your Jin, which is going to be mostly your human kind of standardized race, obviously stylized. Then you have your Gon, which is going to be like big, like muscly dudes and chicks that are really kind of like giant peoples. Then you got your Lin, which are small and cutesy kind of characters. And then you have Yun, which I'm not really sure what Yun's supposed to be, but she can only be female for some reason. Then there's also 6 classes. Now the Jin, Gon, and Lin actually have an exclusive class to their race, while Yun just has the basic classes that can be played on nearly all of them. So for the Jin, they have the Assassin class, which is going to be your quick, kind of sneaky class that just takes out targets without them knowing it, and quite effective at that. Then the Gon have Destroyer, which wields a giant axe, and they destroy things, as the name would suggest. And then you have Lin, which has the Summoner, which summons this little tiny cute little cat thing, which is probably the reason why this is the best thing, because you can dress up your cats in little cute outfits and stuff, which just makes it a million times better. And then the Yun has all the classes that are scattered among these 3. You have the Blade Master, which is the one I'm going to be playing, and you use a blade and you walk around and you have like blocks and counters and things like that and air moves. They're pretty cool. Then you have Kung Fu Master, which is going to be mostly your counter class, so you grab their fist and basically use it against them, and then you have a lot of power moves to kind of knock enemies out of the battle. And then you have your Force Master, which is your magic class, which has a few CC things, a few AoE, and some really cool looking effects you can see in the little video up here in the top left. So let's go ahead and look at the character customization. So we'll go ahead and do Jin for this. Now I do want to mention before we continue on is the Lin for these guys. If you go into here, you can actually change their ears and stuff like that. I know some games don't allow you to, but you have a decent amount as well. Anyways, we'll go back to the Jin because they have all the customization. Now, some of the races do have like small modifications to the way they are. Like Gon are always going to be really tall and really big. However, you can make them about the height of a Jin here, but you know, that's what it is. Anyways, so let's go ahead and look at the customization. So you got all these different presets you can look at. Now I'm going to go ahead and change the background because you can do that, and I like this one. Yeah, you can. So you get all these presets, and you also have stuff like face types. So I can go up here and zoom in. So you get all these different types of face types. It's going to set it up. You will realize that this game really likes its baby faces. Slightly bothers me, but you can customize it however you want. And then you also have skin tones, a good variety. You also can edit the gloss as well. So you can have a really matte face, or you can have a really glossy face and make it look like you're oiled up. Same thing with the skin, stuff like that. So different stuff. And then you also have a nice selection of hairstyles. Now I wish there was more longer hairstyles, because a lot of these are really short or kind of like stubbed and stuff like that, and they kind of float, which is a little bit strange, which probably that's why they don't have very many long hairstyles, but they do have physics, which is quite nice. There's also breast physics if you hadn't noticed already, and there's no butt physics though, so that's kind of a downer. Yeah, I wish there was a few more longer hairstyles, because I personally like long hair, but they still got a nice selection nonetheless. Then you also have hair colors. Now I would like to see like maybe a color picker, but they have a decent selection here anyway, so it's not really that big of a deal. Now this is where it actually gets a little bit interesting. Also, I should probably do the facial decoration, so you can change your eyes and stuff like that, and they got eye colors, brow types, all this type of stuff, cosmetics, so you can have different types of makeup, and yeah, so excuse me. Yeah, so here's where it actually gets interesting, is you have the body types. Now these are the presets, and so you can actually see you can make them quite dynamic, and this isn't just like, oh, well, you know, oh, you pick from these and that's it. No, you actually get sliders. So here's all the face sliders, and I'm not going to go through all these. There's a lot of them. So those are the face. You can even have wrinkles if you want them. So if you want like an older style character, you can be like, oh, I'm going to be an old woman and just beat up people because that's what I do. And you can end up doing that if you want to. Then you also have the body customization. Now this is a lot of options. You can pretty much customize everything that you want. Now the core ones are going to probably be your frame, which is going to be making you very skinny and a lot thicker actually. A lot of games like this, especially from this region, you don't get a lot of games that actually allow you to be a thicker character, so that's actually really cool to see. I'm not like somebody who really cares, because I always make skinnier characters, that's just who I am, but it's kind of cool to actually see that people can make larger characters. People don't, but you can. So yeah, there's tons of customization, and it keeps it within a certain bounds, as in you can't go too ridiculous, but you can do some really cool things, and I've seen some ridiculous looking characters, and you can completely screw up your character too. So if you want a character that looks just ridiculously stupid, you can do that as well. There's one that I personally like doing is like pupil size. So you can even edit your pupil size and just have your eyes completely black, which I think looks super cool. For some reason, I'm twisted. Anyway, so I'm going to go ahead and look over here as well. So you can actually have some customizations for your poses as well when you're previewing your characters, which some people like that. Make her look all sexy. You can also clothe her if you are that type of person. And also, when you're in different races and stuff like that, it'll show you different classes. So this is like how to kind of preview what outfits are going to look like. So if you want to be like, oh, I like the bulky outfits, you know, you can customize your character and look at it how it's going to look in the bulky ones. You can also select your voice, which is quite nice. And there's a nice selection here. Now, there's about 2 for each race, and then there's like 1 or 2 extras. And so some of them are like really, really high-pitched and don't really fit, but they do have a default one as well and stuff like that. Now, in the closed beta, they actually showed it, which race it was supposed to be, but they kind of removed that tag. So I don't really know. You'll just have to look at them like Untamed Heart.
For justice.
For justice. Oh, for vengeance. So it's not just justice and vengeance. Anyways, let's go ahead and go back, and we'll go ahead and go into my character. You can see here, I went more of a semi-realistic yet anime-style character, kind of your typical anime character, really. And we're going to go ahead and play with her. Not in the way you're thinking. Anyways, my loading screens are kind of long, so I'm going to go ahead and skip it. Alright, so I've gone ahead and loaded into my game. Now, there are a few things I want to mention before we begin, is that for the UI and stuff like that, if you've watched the game, I have customized my UI a little bit, so you can move everything in the UI around. It's completely customizable. Obviously, I'll show that later. And then the key bindings are also going to be a little bit strange because I'm using my own custom setup that I prefer for these types of games. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about gameplay because that's kind of what's important. That's actually what I think is probably the most interesting part of this game, aside from the aesthetic and the location. Now, I do know that this place isn't necessarily the most beautiful place to show off. This is just where I happen to be, and I can actually zoom into first person, look around. So yeah, this isn't the worst place. There's actually a cool area over there I'll walk into. Anyways, yeah, let's talk about gameplay. So you're able to swing wherever you want. So you actually have kind of open hack and slash style. However, it does sort of use the target system, as in not all skills can be just used wherever you want. You'll notice that on my skill bar down at the bottom down here, you'll actually see that some of them are grayed out, and that's because I need a target to use some of them, and I also need focus to do things. So let's go ahead and fight this enemy. He's going to go really quick because he's an easy enemy. Oops, I accidentally slipped behind him. And I screwed that up completely because I'm trying to record, which means I just don't do very well. Had my hand in the wrong spot. Anyway, so combat is very, very fast and fluid. You go up and you actually can kill enemies fairly quickly. And so I actually have a block slash counter. I actually got rid of my block ability, so I have a counter. So when they attack me, I can actually use my ability to counter. Now, there's actually resources too, so dang it, I keep screwing up the counter. Okay, right on. There we go. Now I can fling him into the air and knock him down, beat him up. Oh, I ran out of focus. Okay, so anyway, so there's actually like 3 resources when you're in combat. There's your normal health, obviously. There's focus, which is going to be used for abilities, which certain abilities will actually gain your focus, and then other abilities will use it. And so like my knock up when I was knocking him into the air, I'll show that in a second. It actually used focus, and I didn't have enough focus to finish the combo, which kind of sucked because it looks cool. And then you have stamina, which is used for running and aerodynamics, which we'll talk about in a second. But like I was saying with that combat stuff, so go here, knock him up into the air. This is the combo I wanted to do, and whoop, ow! I love it. This game is very, very stylized. The combat is very, very fast, and one of the things I really, really like about it is it's really skill-based. I want to say, like, I know some people are going to argue against that point because it's mostly a rotation game still, just like any other MMO. But the thing is, like, it's very free and open. You can dodge attacks, and you actually go through pretty much every fight without taking damage if you're good enough at blocking and dodging and countering and stuff like that. There's a few exceptions, like when you get larger mobs of enemies, you can't literally block everyone. So the way the game still uses the target system is basically, you'll see this little tiny reticule on my screen in the middle, which is fairly transparent, so I'm not sure if it'll show up on the video. It should, but ultimately, that's what you're going to be hitting when you're aiming. So basically, certain attacks can only hit a certain number of targets, and so like my basic attack can only hit 1 target, so whatever I'm aiming at is what it'll hit. You obviously have to be in range, and it does the whole hitbox thing, so you have to be in hitbox, and if he attacks me and I'm able to dodge backwards in time, he actually won't damage me. And so you can actually like dodge out of wave things, stuff like that. And there's different abilities, such as my counter, that will actually nullify damage. And if I block an attack, it stuns him and allows me to use different abilities. Now this comes into the combo play as well. And so there's actually a ton of combos that you can do in this game. And I'm not perfectly good at them, but there's different move sets and stuff like that. So like, the Blade Master is able to go into draw mode, which I just showed there, to where you get the lightning attacks and stuff like that, and you actually get an entirely new move set aside from like 1 or 2 abilities, and you're actually able to customize them with the skill system as well. So if you go into here using the K menu, you actually go into your martial tomb. Now it takes a little bit to unlock this, so you don't have this right away, but you unlock points to actually customize your abilities, and so these are the skill trees. And one of the interesting things about this is that each skill actually has its own skill tree, which is kind of cool, and you can refund these whenever you want. So like, let's say I don't want that, I can just refund it and put it somewhere else if I want. So you can actually, you know, pick and choose whatever you want, and it doesn't cost you anything to rebind either. And then also, one of the things I wanted to mention about this is I was mentioning my block / counter. I actually replaced my block with a counter. So where is it? It is on my Q, so it would be Blade Strike. So I actually replaced it, so you can see here, I could refund it and get my block back. So we can actually do this real quick. And then I can actually have a block, and that would just block things from in front of me, and you can actually move around and aim it and stuff like that. So you can actually block attacks. However, I like to have the counter because it allows me to very quickly, I have to be better at timing, but what it does is actually reflex damage and stuff like that. So if I go up to an enemy, instead of just, well, I just zoom behind him and stuff like that. There's lots of different abilities. There's also side steps and stuff like that, so I can slide step behind him. It'll bring me into draw mode, and I can use draw mode to go into my other modes, and I can use blade call to call on that, and it's like everything can combo together, which just, it feels very satisfying to play. Now, another thing that's fairly satisfying, although one of the things that really extremely ruins this game is lag, and this is going to go into the movement system. Now I'm recording this fairly late, so I don't think I'm going to lag too bad, but the movement system is actually extremely fluid as well. So you saw me running around jumping on those rocks and stuff like that. The game is very, very fluent, so you can even run over and just vault over fences. You can jump really high. You can, you know, glide and stuff like that if I don't run out of stamina. So you can glide, you can speed up while gliding, you can zoom into the ground, so I can be like, vroom. There's also supposed to be like wall running and stuff like that too, but I haven't unlocked it yet. One of the things that annoys me about the movement system is you start with the basic stuff. So you can sprint and you can glide. But everything else you have to unlock as you go. And you can also run on water and stuff like that. But once again, the running on water is actually unlocked. Although none of this stuff is necessary. Ooh, that was some lag. Yeah, it's not necessarily everything's like difficult to get. I know that to get my gliding and falling down thing. So when I'm doing this and then falling down, I actually had to unlock that through getting a very difficult to find item, which was, it wasn't hard, it was just time consuming. So some of them later on do get some time consuming, but at the start, to get all the basic stuff, it's fairly easy. Lag does extremely destroy the gameplay of this game though, which is very, very unfortunate. So if you have to play with high ping, I do not recommend this game because it's an action game, but you could probably rough through it. Anyway, so that's kind of that. I do want to carry on with the kind of quest structure as well. So this is actually one of the areas that I'm in, and if I travel down this pathway down there, actually, I said I was going to show one little area, so I guess I won't show over there. But basically, you'll see on my little map up in the top right, you'll see these big giant red circles. Oop. When I'm over here, you actually see these giant red circles. Now, that's kind of how they show the quest areas of this game, is in you go to an NPC, you get the quest. It's very standard, as in like, oh, this is the area you need to go to, and it'll show you what enemies you need to kill too. So that's kind of nice. But the quests are very uninspired, aside from a few of the main quests. As in, it's very much go to this area, kill these, or collect these, or do this, talk to this NPC, talk to that NPC, and there's no like discovery elements to it or anything like that. There's no secret quests or anything, at least not that I know of. Also, here's this area. This area is pretty cool. I can go into first person to show it off better. I do like being able to do this and observe the scenery. This game is a very, very pretty game when you're in the right areas. It's not graphically updated, but I'll obviously talk about that a little bit later. But yeah, on to the quests. So the quests aren't very, very interesting, but one thing I do want to mention is the main story. This game actually surprised me with its main story, as in when you go into the story, it feels like a game, which obviously this is a game, and so that sounds kind of weird, but MMOs have this habit of having very, very terrible main stories. And there's a few exceptions to this, and this is actually one of those ones to where I feel that's it. It started off as in you are the chosen one sort of thing, as in you're in their village, and it gets destroyed. Now while I'm talking about this, I'm actually going to go ahead and find a dungeon. Talk about that in a second. I'll go ahead and do Black Ram Narrows. That was the one I did earlier, so I'll do that one. Anyway, so the main story was actually quite interesting, and the reason I say it felt like a game is it actually felt like a single-player game almost. You start in your own little villages, you're on your own, it's not a shared instance or anything, and you go through the story and your village gets destroyed, and your quest is kind of like go and get revenge and stuff like that, which is actually really cool. And as the story progressed, obviously it broke immersion right as soon as I went into the next area, and it's like, oh, well, here's a bunch of players now, which that kind of breaks the flow. So that aspect is still there. But the story actually surprised me because it has like twists and things in it. It's like, hey, you know, oh, this is that and this is that, and I don't want to do spoilers because this game actually has available spoilers, which you can't say that about a lot of MMOs. So that was surprising. One thing I will say about the main story though is that in certain points, when you get at certain progress, it's like, oh my god, that was a huge twist, this was that, and oh my god, how is that going to end? And then it just kind of leaves it there, and it's like, okay, now go to this other area and help these people and stuff, and it's like starts a whole new quest line, which is like, what? Like, what happened there? But obviously they're releasing more content and they're supposed to span it out longer, so obviously they're going to go back to it. It's just that kind of creates this weird disconnect. So I kind of want to know what's going on with that first original storyline, but then now they have the second storyline that I'm still interested in. And so, you know, it's kept it interesting for me, which is really, really rare for an MMO. That said, though, I don't read any of the side quests. They're not really too special. Now, they do have this kind of interesting thing to where there's little towns and stuff like that, and they'll tell you kind of what the lore is behind that town. Like, there was a pottery town, and so everything was about how they did pottery and stuff like that, which was kind of cool. But ultimately, I didn't find it worth reading everything. But every time I go to a town, I always read 1 or 2 quests, which there's only like 6 quests in each area. The game does progress quite quickly. Anyway, so I went in this pottery finder that we've been sitting in there as I ramble. So this is actually one of the cooler features in the game. Now, there are dungeons and stuff like that, as you would expect. The game is open world, and so you just kind of travel between areas. As you saw, I was able to walk into that village, you know, out and in. And that's kind of how the game works. So there's these little portals for larger areas. So the game is separated into like these larger instances almost. And so you walk into the portal, and if your game is able to load quick enough, it actually just goes seamlessly, which is actually pretty cool. But otherwise, I'll obviously show it later, but otherwise it goes to a loading screen and just loads up. It depends how long you're going to take to load, and the game kind of predicts that and stuff like that. Normally I'm not in the loading screen for too long. It's pretty good about that, except for when I first load into the game. Anyways, for dungeons, you can go and just find the dungeon and wait there and find parties and locally and stuff like that. However, there's also this cross server dungeon like kind of matchmaking system, which I actually like. So I can just be like, hey, I already got Black Ram Narrows, so you select your dungeon that you want here, any of them that you want. Now I'm going to pick Black Ram because I know it's going to go quick, because I know people are always looking for this one because it has a rare drop. So we can find people quick. But what it'll do is it'll automatically match you up with stuff, and you can actually set some settings, and you can actually create your own party within these as well. Now the cool thing about this is this game has separate servers, and to be able to play with other people on other servers, you can actually just use this system and be like, hey, we're going to go run some dungeons. So you don't have to be on the same server to play with your friends, which is quite nice. Alright, so I went ahead and skipped the loading and the pre-lobby thing. Now there is a lobby when you go into these that's like, hey, here's a little tiny lobby to where they have shopkeepers, and they have the daily quest keepers as well. So it's like, hey, you know, I'm going to this dungeon and I want to complete the daily quest. You can literally just go into that room and it'll have all those stuff. So I went ahead and skipped that. So yeah, a little bit interested. Anyway, so here we are in a dungeon, and dungeons can have up to 6 people. I don't know if there's larger raids, at least not at this level. I think there are in the future, but not at this level. And there's also field bosses as well, so if you want to go out and fight field bosses. So I did say the combat was very, very quick and very, very fluid, and you saw how fast I could actually kill an enemy and stuff like that. I could actually glide and fight as well, which is kind of cool. I wasn't able to do it there because they killed the enemies too quick, but for flow, and then boom, smash down. They got a lot of cool moves in this game. So anyway, so now we're in the dungeon. So there are open field dungeons and stuff like that as well, or not open field dungeons, open field bosses, which take a little bit more to kill, and generally people mob around it. But for dungeons, you get 6 people. Now, dungeons are actually fairly short in this game. That's actually one of the things I like about this. Combined with the party finder kind of system matchmaking that they have, and the making that easy to find people for whatever you want to run, it's also very, very short to do dungeons, which means that this is actually one of those games I recommend to play. Like, whenever I want to play something real quick, it's actually very, very easy to just go into and start playing something. Also, the in-dungeon stuff actually has this auction system that I rather like. So when drops go on there, you have your like round robin settings and stuff like that too. But you're able to have this auction system that actually makes it, this is default by the way, if somebody wants an item, they just say, hey, I'll bid on it. And then once the bidding goes out and there's like somebody gets the item, the unpurchased gold or whatever, the coins that are left over, actually just go to the other players, so it like distributes. So it's like, hey, you know, they get this, they started the boss, so I can't grab these. Also, there's these little heart things which actually added extra lives to you, sort of, in a sense. Basically, when your health bar reaches 0, it'll use it up. Now I have one from a special item I got, so hopefully I don't use that up because I'd rather keep it. But yeah, the game actually gives you extra lives, which is quite nice. Also, here's a bomb. This is one of the things about the combat. Some enemies will actually drop like items and stuff like that. So we're gonna go ahead and throw that bomb. It'll instantly kill someone. So sometimes they'll drop weapons and stuff like that. Now we're fighting a little mini boss guy. It's kind of like halfway through the dungeon, so he's got like special moves. Now you'll see that little yellow marker, except he died, so you didn't see it very often. But there's also like land markers and stuff like that for when they're gonna use large attacks, and we'll see it on the boss, so it's not really that big of a deal. There we go. I got 2 dragon blood. Basically, that means if my health runs out, it'll refill it instantly. Back onto the yellow markers though. There's different colors, so there's yellow, red, and stuff like that, and basically what that's going to do is it shows when they're going to attack. So once it fills up, they're going to use their next attack, which means that you'll probably want to move out of the way. So it makes it very easy to dodge those larger attacks. Now, another thing about the combat and stuff like that that I really, really like is that a lot of it is focused on kind of watching your enemy and knowing what they're going to do next. And so a lot of the random mobs and stuff like that, like these smaller guys, it's going to be mostly learning how the enemy attacks. And so some of them will do charge up attacks, and some of them will use like little magical circles and stuff like that. But then other ones will just have certain body movements, and so you can watch that. Now my game's lagging a little bit. I think the servers are kind of being overloaded at the moment, which is unfortunate. But yeah, and I just used a little bit of damage there. There we go. Used a little bit of damage. Took a little bit of damage is what I meant to say. My words are a little scrambled. Now let's talk about a little bit of the party synergy stuff. So the game, one thing that I'm a little bit disappointed in is there's not a lot of party synergy. Like there's not a lot of buffs, there's no dedicated healers or anything like that, which is also a good thing in a lot of people's eyes, as in everyone's kind of for it themselves and you're just kind of going around doing this and destroying people. Now there are certain attacks that you can kind of combine with other players. And so let's say you're fighting a boss, one person tries to kick them over, another person could use a stun ability, and then it'll just knock the enemy over and actually stun them for a while, which is extremely useful in certain bosses. However, the game's also not very, very difficult, especially with 6 people who are over-leveled destroying the hell out of people. Like, this is a level 20 dungeon. I probably should have picked a harder dungeon, but whatever. I wanted something that would go quicker for the video. But yeah, and then also, there's not a lot of abilities that kind of synergize aside from what I was talking about with the bosses, which is kind of unfortunate. And it's very actually hard to actually use those abilities at the right time too, because the time frame is very, very small. And so if you don't use the ability in the right spot or in the right time, it just won't do anything, which is kind of unfortunate. And it does default to space, however you can rebind it if you want to, which is also my jump key. So most of the time I miss it and I just end up jumping randomly into combat, which not a big deal because normally combat goes pretty quickly. Now, one thing about the difficulty though that a lot of people have had for the dungeons, now I don't know how endgame dungeons in the future are going to be, but a lot of people have complained about the difficulty in general from the outset, as in the game is pretty dang easy. You'll see we're actually tearing through this. Now that's mostly because we have, you know, over-leveled players. The dungeons, from my experience, currently where I'm at, I actually got to a dungeon that was actually really, really interesting, to where we actually have to fight a dragon. We have to use rifles to shoot him down and stuff like that. I'll talk about boss mechanics when we get to this boss. But that dungeon was actually pretty difficult, so I think that most people are actually playing the game like 100% optimally, and then so if you do that, maybe the game's easier. But you can also have up to 6 players, so if you get 6 well-endowed players, you're probably going to go through pretty quickly. Now, one thing I will mention is that the frame rate, as you'll probably notice in the video, I'm not sure if it'll show up or not, but I am quite lagging. Now, that is actually an issue with the game itself. It has optimization issues when you're running with other players, so that becomes an issue when you're running certain dungeons, especially in field bosses and stuff like that. So you'll end up lagging a lot and stuff like that. It's just not very nice, but there are certain tweaks that you can do to kind of make it slightly better, but mostly it's a CPU issue. I just wanted to mention that since the frame rate is going to die here. I could drop my settings to get a few more FPS, but I can't get it to maintain 60 very well. Now I'm also skipping my auctions. You can pass on auctions as well, but I'm just skipping through it because I don't really need anything from here. I'm not really worried about it. I just picked this one to show off, so yeah. Also, I can be really, really stylish when I do that. Oh, here's a cutscene. Skip. The game does also have cutscenes. One thing I didn't mention about the story and stuff like that is the story's voice acting. I do want to mention the voice acting real quick. The voice acting is not great, but it does have cutscenes and stuff like that as well. And the cutscenes are cheapish. They're not like amazing or anything, but they're enough to like convey ideas, and some of them are comical and stuff like that, which is quite nice. So I'll go ahead and attack this boss. So now we're on the boss. Now, this is one of the earlier bosses that you'll actually fight in the game, or one of the first bigger bosses, I should say. So it's not the first boss, but yeah. Basically, a lot of the bosses have different mechanics. Now, this guy has mechanics to where he'll jump up and he can grab me, Essentially, I'm being grabbed and they can knock me out of it, but they're not doing a good job of it. Ouch. Okay, that took off a quarter of my health, but that's okay. He's switching forms now. And he has multiple forms, and he'll jump into the air and slam down. Now, a lot of different bosses, like I was saying, the dungeon that I'm currently at is a giant dragon thing. We actually have to fight him back and shoot him down with rifles when he starts to fly and stuff like that, which is super, super cool. It's a super cool boss fight, but it's also one that kicks my butt. But different bosses actually have different mechanics and stuff like that you can dodge, which is actually pretty cool. There's not really too many things that have been too original. Like the rifle shooting down the dragon thing is the first thing that I've seen that's kind of like a little bit more of an interesting mechanic. Most of them are just kind of dodge their attacks and you're good. But that one was actually pretty cool. And they also have really, really cool effects, and the arena style bosses is pretty cool too. And then it's going to teleport us, which was described in the cutscene that was skipped. Everyone just skips the cutscene, so if you want to see this cutscenes, you might have to run it solo, which you could run this game solo if you really, really wanted to. It'd probably be pretty fun that way. Now I'm going to go ahead and claim my reward here. So wheat, there we go, and then I'll just go ahead and leave the party. And I'm going to go ahead and skip back to when I'm out of all this stuff. So, yeah, BRB. Alright, so I'm back. It does, once you end up going back to whatever you were doing, once you exit the party finder / matchmaking thing, it actually just puts you right back where you were. And you can actually access that wherever you want. So I can just hit F7 and I can literally do any dungeon in the game. Now these are all the dungeons in the game. At least I think so. There might be one or two that you can't do. I'm not 100% sure. I know there's some solo dungeons that are just for story stuff. But yeah, you could just be like, oh, I want to do Black Ram supply chain. Just go to cross server and it'll just take me right there. And then whenever I exit, I'll be right back here, which is quite nice. Anyways, I was going to walk down here. So let's go ahead and talk about progression. Now, one of the things that's actually interesting about this game is they decided to kind of simplify progression in a lot of ways. This area looks kind of cool too. So we can walk back here. There's actually one of those little dungeons I was talking about. There's story stuff in there, so I'm actually not going to go there. I may as well teleport someone. Oh yeah, there's a nice wolf guy here. Anyways, I'm going to go ahead and transfer somewhere. Let's go ahead to one of the earlier areas. So you can actually just go ahead and go into here. The UI, if I hold down Alt, I can actually just access all the UI and stuff like that, and the map actually works fully functioning. As in, I can hit M to kind of open it up here if I wanted to, but I like just holding Alt and going up here. So, what area do I want to go to? I don't even know what area I want to go to. Amber Lookout? I don't even know where that was. We'll go, I think, up here? Is this a cool area? No, I don't think that's the cool area. That's the village and stuff. Whatever. We'll go here. Yeah, we'll go to Lair of the Valley. Anyways, so progression is actually... Oops. Oh, god dang it. I canceled it. Hopefully it lets me still do it. Actually, let's go to... That's the village, right? Yeah, I'll go to the village. There we go. Alright, anyways. I'll take my hands off the keyboard. Basically, progression has actually been sped up a little bit, as in this game doesn't feel as grindy as other MMOs have in the standard format. It is a little bit grindy, as in some of the quests are very uninspired, so it's like, kill 10 of this, kill 15 of this, and you're like, by 5 of those, you're like, alright, I've killed 5 of these, I know exactly his attack pattern, I know how to kill him in 3 seconds. Like, that's a good thing that I can kill him in 3 seconds, but at the same time, I gotta do that 15 times, and so it's like, yeah, repeating the 15 times thing. And there are some that are like item drops, it's like, get this item drop, and it's like, I'm not a lucky guy, and so it's like, collect 3 of these, and it'll take me 30 enemies to get it, so... Yeah, so some of the things do feel a little bit grindy. However, it's definitely better than a lot of MMOs I played, especially with the progression path and getting equipment and stuff like that. Now, that dungeon that I was just playing, that actually drops one of the rare materials that you can get, and if I go into my inventory, it actually dropped these boxes, which I have a few of them, because stuffs. So I can open these, and it'll be like, oh, you know, here's a Blight Fang, which is actually a really rare material that you need to, like, craft stuff, and it does a good consistency of giving you what you need when you need it, when you're hunting for it. So there are a few things that are hard to get, like there's certain special weapons and stuff like that that are difficult to get, which you'll find that later into the game, but for the most part, it's actually pretty simple. Also, the leveling and stuff like that has been fairly fluid as well. I get training points quite frequently, as in every level after I think it's like level 5 or something like that, you actually get them. And the weapon progression is actually quite interesting as well. So weapons are not just straight up upgrades of like, oh, I found a better weapon so I use it. What I've been doing is I've actually been upgrading a weapon that I had from like almost the very beginning. And how you can do that is you actually combine equipment into itself, and so you evolve it and transform it is what I'm at now. So I actually need to get an Infernal Sword, and I can combine the Infernal Sword with my True Blight Sword, and it'll actually create an Awakened Infernal Sword, so it'll just create an entirely new weapon. And that's kind of how most of the progression goes. Now, there are other gear and stuff like that you can find. And so like my accessories, I can go to manage equipment. And I can just be like, oh, I found this blight necklace. Let's go ahead and evolve. And it'll be like, boom. And when you level it up to these certain points, it'll actually give it a little bit more stats. And then when it reaches the breakthrough point or the evolve point, it will actually just turn into something completely new. And it'll give better stats as you upgrade them as well. So that's how I've been doing that as well. And you need rare materials, obviously, to kind of do that. Now, the other way that you're able to increase your stats, aside from leveling and the equipment, is actually the shield system. So this allows you to equip 8, I believe, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8. So yes, I was right. 8, that looked like 8. So you're able to equip these soul shield things, or whatever you want to call them. I think they're soul shields. Yeah, they're soul shields. And you're able to equip up to 8 of these, and these have different stats on them. And one thing that's actually interesting about it, I don't think I have any that I can do right now, but you can actually fuse them together. And so let's say you got one that has crit on it, but it's not like nearly as good as one you have equipped or something like that. You can actually equip another one and then have additional crit added to this. So you're able to customize your abilities just a little tiny bit, or stats a little bit. So that's kind of nice. And then you obviously can combine a certain type to actually get like an increased stuff. So like this one, I'm missing one from the set, but it gives me set bonuses and stuff like that. So it's got a little bit of customization. Now, another thing about the equipment that slightly annoys me is that it has a seal and keys system. And so certain boxes that you'll get, I don't think I have one, but there's actually a key system. And so certain chests, you'll have to use a key to open. Now, you get keys like crazy in this game, and you can get more of them pretty easily. Just it's time consuming to get them. That's pretty much it. So you get a certain amount from like dailies and stuff like that, and they're very easy to do. So it's not really a big deal. It's just one of those things, kind of gate progression, I guess. And then they have the sealing system, which, oh, this one requires a key, so I can click on there, it'll take a key. And then also, whenever you get new equipment, you have to unseal it to use it, which is slightly annoying. But at the same time, you're always like, wait, is that the last piece I need for my set? Oh no, I'm missing that piece. Dang it. Thought I got something great. But yeah, so you have to unseal it, and seals are a little bit more difficult to get, as in they've patched it so that you can get more of them, but I still find problems keeping them. I obviously have 29 of them now, so maybe I've gotten that fixed a little bit, but you have to unseal it to use it, which is slightly annoying. But you don't have to unseal it to actually like combine it with other equipment. So you also don't need to unseal everything. So it's like, oh, I don't need the soul shard because I already need, or soul shield because I already have that one. And so it's like, oh, I don't need to, unseal it to use it because I already have one. So I can just use that or sell it or whatever. I can also like dismantle it and stuff like that for different materials so you can upgrade it and stuff like that. So yeah, that's kind of how equipment and progression works, aside from the whole martial tomb, which I already talked about. So you get the focus points as you level up, and you can customize these. And the interesting thing is some of them will turn into completely different abilities when you use them, such as the blade strike / block. So that's actually pretty cool. All right, sorry about the cut there. Somebody was knocking on my door, so I had to go deal with that. Anyways, let's go ahead and talk about graphics and performance stuff. So as I said before, there was a little bit of a CPU kind of optimization issue when there's a lot of multiple players on the screen. Now, obviously, you can decrease your view distance, stuff like that, to slightly improve it. However, it doesn't necessarily ever get solved, as in I have really bad problems running this game at 60, as in it mostly stays around 30 or below, especially when I'm in open areas, and the field bosses obviously have a lot of players around them, and so that actually causes a lot of issues as well. But graphically, the game looks pretty nice. As in, it's not a bad looking game. It is starting to get outdated, as this game technically is older, but it has some really cool environment designs and stuff like that. So it's got these fantastic waterfalls and interesting open fields and stuff like that. So I can go over here. Now, I will say it was open world, so I can actually just go over here. It's going to skip for a second because it has to load the next area. And then I go over here. So the game looks pretty good, as in it's starting to look dated, so that's kind of unfortunate, but it's probably the best game I've ever seen in this type of setting. And a lot of the environment designs, the clothing, character designs and stuff like that are actually pretty good. And so I can actually go ahead and switch over to different outfits as well. So like the outfits and stuff like that, you actually get a lot of outfits for free in this game. And one thing I didn't mention about the equipment is the outfits actually determine your faction and stuff like that. And so like if I switch to this Tyrian cultist outfit or uniform, anybody who's actually wearing this outfit is actually on my side. So like enemies and stuff like that. So the enemies of this court or cult will actually be on my side when I'm wearing this outfit. And then enemies to that faction will actually attack me, such as like certain guards and stuff like that, which is actually pretty cool. So the outfits actually don't add any stats or anything like that, but they have that kind of faction element. And there's actually PvP factions as well. So there's Crimson, and then I think it's Celestial. and they're actually the PvP faction. So whenever you're wearing those two, the opposing side is actually open PvP, so you can actually PvP wherever you want. And also, the sound effects and animation and stuff like that are actually pretty good too. There's a few spots to where animation kind of skips, so like if you're swimming or something like that, because you can swim, and you can also run on water, but the thing is when you're swimming and then you instantly go running, it just snaps you onto the top of the water, which kind of breaks it a little bit. But overall, it looks pretty good. There's some textures I wish were better, especially on some of the rocks and stuff like that. You'll notice it's just like, looks really, really blurry and stuff like that. But for me, especially since it's an MMO, and especially with those optimization issues, I think it's fine. It looks pretty good. It looks passable. The enemy designs are also really, really interesting and stuff like that as well. So that's kind of how that goes. Also, that guy dropped the bomb that I needed to dodge. Go ahead and take him out. So yeah, it's got a lot of different environments and stuff like that. And as I go through the game, it actually keeps things interesting, as in there's a lot of different environments and stuff like that that look really original. And each town kind of has its own look to it as well. So graphically and stuff like that, it's looked pretty good. Obviously, performance, not great. So let's go ahead and look at the options menu real quick. Now, I did mention you could customize the UI however you wanted. So I can just go ahead and hit Shift and U, or go into my little escape menu here, and you can actually move everything around as well. So that's pretty cool. And they actually have a snapping feature, so these actually snap together. So I can snap this here, and it'll actually move wherever I want it as well with all these. And you can just snap whatever you want, and you can actually turn off snapping altogether if you don't want it to snap. But yeah, so you can customize everything there, which is actually pretty cool. I'm gonna go ahead and cancel so I don't move anything. Anyways, on to the options real quick. So settings. So there's a lot of options. I'm not going to go through them. This is where you actually select your classic mode if you want to play like a standard MMO. Then down here is actually camera smoothing. Now what this does is actually adds a frame delay. You'll notice that my camera is actually kind of like smoothed around. So it kind of like follows the character much like an action game. Now by default, that's actually off. I turned it on to 1 because it adds that nice smoothing effect. And you actually customize where your camera is as well. So I have mine slightly to the side, which actually moved it to the right. So to the left is the right, to the right is the left. That's kind of weird, but you get used to it. Anyway, so I added that because it made it feel a little bit more like an action game, which is quite nice. Anyway, it's just going to go quickly through here. You can customize your notifications and stuff like that, which is actually really nice. Status info, your combat info, targeting, so you can actually, you know, edit that reticule, which I wish you could turn it off, but you can't for some reason, so that's annoying. You can turn it really transparent though, but I'd rather see it rather than barely see it. Then you have your name. I obviously turn off mine because I know who I am. Then you have your community, your screenshots, and your HUD interface stuff. And then you also have your graphics options. Now this is going to be your windowed and full screen. It is borderless by default, so you'll have to, you know, kind of work around that depending on your system. You can go dedicated if you hit Alt and Enter at the very same time when you're in windowed mode. It'll actually just go to dedicated full screen. So if you need that for some reason, my game kind of acts weird when it does that, so I don't use it. So I just use borderless. My capture software works that way anyway, so we're good with that. You can also show your frame rate. Up in the top left, there's this little tiny number. I don't know if it'll show up on the video or not, but that shows it up there. And then you also have VSync and stuff like that. And you can also limit the frame rate in the background, which is super nice. I have it down to 5, so when you Alt-Tab, it'll actually just lower your frame rate, so it's not a resource hog for no reason. And then you also have subtitles down here, which is always nice to see. And then you also have low-end and 3D monitor support, which I don't really recommend using the 3D monitors because this game doesn't run very well. Here's the graphics options. You can see it. I have almost everything turned up. Now, turning it down does improve my performance a little bit. I can maybe get like 5 FPS, but ultimately that's not really worth it in my opinion because I'm still going to drop ridiculously. The things that affect the most here are the view distances, so turn those down and you're pretty good. And then everything else, obviously I have all the blurs turned off. They have this LEAA, which is actually a different type of anti-aliasing that's supposedly designed for the game. It looks worse than FXAA, so I just have it disabled like always. And then you also have UI theme, which you can change the color and the transparency and stuff like that. So I can just go ahead and customize the colors. So yeah, that's it basically for that. And then there's also sound options, plenty of sliders. I love this. I always turn off the system voice, but I have it on just for this video, but I normally turn that off. That's that thing to where you see where it's like telling me clan members are logging on stuff. That's the system voice. That's why I turned it off. It also does it for the auction. Cool. Everyone's getting online. That's awesome. It's the morning. That's why. And then obviously you have key bindings as well. Now you can bind 2 keys to the same action, but you can't double bind. So I couldn't be like up is both move forward and left. That isn't a thing, but you can customize everything. You can have 2 keys for everything, which is super nice. The game also has gamepad support. So if you want to play with the gamepad, I don't have it plugged in right now, but you can actually customize that completely as well. So that's super awesome. The thing with the UI with the gamepad is that it uses the thumbstick, the joystick, to actually use the mouse, which is a little bit strange. It takes some getting used to, but it's not the first game that's done that. So yeah, that's basically that. Real quick, we'll also go to the cash shop. Not going to take too long. One thing that's interesting about the cash shop is that I believe it's F10. I can just shortcut to it. There it goes. One thing that's interesting about the cash shop, I'm going to move so you can get this beautiful view of the ocean. Big giant sprawling field. I think that's actually a better view. Whatever. Anyways, into the cash shop. One thing that's interesting is it actually has two currencies for the cash shop. It has the N coin and then Hung Moon coins, which you can actually get in game. So that's pretty cool. Anyway, so this is going to be stuff like cosmetics, so you can get outfits and try these on. And they got some pretty fan servicey stuff in here, but there's also some that aren't so much. There's some pretty cool ones though, so. Yep, and you also get accessories, so you can wear like hats and stuff. So if you want to, I guess, whatever that hat is, I guess it's like a sheep, you can have that. Then you also have consumables, which is going to be like buffs and things like that. That's like XP buffs and potions. Just nothing that's pay to win. Nothing adds like stats or anything. It's just like XP boosts and stuff, so speed up things. And you have supply, which is going to be like keys and things like that. You can also get all this stuff with the Hung Moon coins. Materials you cannot, however. And this is just kind of like super shortcut stuff. So if you don't want to grind or go into a dungeon for this stuff, you can just, you know, buy it, I guess. I think it's kind of ridiculous they have this as an option. I wouldn't use it, but it's there regardless. Then you have services. It's going to be like character slots and changing your customization stuff. Then you have signature, which is just bundles. And then you have the membership stuff, which just gives you a bonuses and stuff like that. So it'll be like increased XP, more drops, and quicker like recovery times and stuff like that. So nothing pay to win, which is quite nice. Some people might say that the premium stuff may be pay to win because you can revive yourself quicker. But at the same time, you normally don't revive yourself in combat anyways. You normally have somebody else revive you, and you have tickets and stuff like that you can get in game that revive you. And so not a big deal. And you can also unlock it with Hung Moon coins. You can't get the membership, I don't think, with the Hung Moon coins, but once again, that's kind of moot. Anyways, that's kind of been me for this. So what's my conclusion? I actually really like this game, like quite a lot actually. I went into this game thinking that it was just going to be another kind of MMO, and I've actually found that I really like it. And I'm kind of unfortunately sad that I waited so long to actually check it out, because I had closed beta access, so I started playing it. I'm like, all right, so questing and stuff like that, and I only played for like an hour maybe, not even that actually. I customized my character, which I was quite impressed with the character customization, but after that I was like, whatever, it's just another MMO. But then I started playing it more once it reached open beta, and I was like, oh wow, this is actually really good. I really like the combat. The combat is really fast, it's really fluid, and it's really fun. And I like the fact that the progression is actually quicker. When I first started, I was like, all right, so these quests are very uninspired, which is definitely a complaint I have. So if your problem with MMOs was the fact that the quests were very uninspired, this may not be your game. But the main story was actually quite interesting once I started getting into it, and the combat was fluid and fun enough, and the progression through the areas was quick enough that I was like, all right, so I'm seeing enough new content quick enough to where I actually want to keep going. And it didn't feel like a grind for a very long time. Now, it sort of does now, as in some of the quests are getting a little bit long. It's like, kill 20 of this, and it's like, all right, well, that's going to take a little bit of time. Or there was one quest where I had to go and kill this field boss like 20 times to get a certain drop. And so that took a little bit of time. Obviously, that's more luck-oriented, but regardless, that took time, and so that felt a little grindy. So it is getting a little bit more grindy now that I'm getting farther into the game. But overall, it's been a pretty good experience. So if you're looking for an MMO with really good combat and interesting areas and a really interesting world, like design-wise, then this is definitely something you might go for. You may also check it out for the story mode, but you're obviously going to have to go through all the grinding, and there's not much of a main story. There's cutscenes, and voice acting is kind of shoddy in places, but regardless, it's nice that it's there. And it's an interesting story. It's got some twists and things like that, which was quite surprising, and it actually had me interested in an MMO story, which hasn't happened ever for me, actually. So that's a big compliment I have the game. But for other people that want a story-centric game, there's probably other games you could probably pick up for that. So yeah, that's kind of my conclusion. If you're looking for a good combat MMO, then this is definitely it. And you can go into quick, and there's PvP and stuff like that too, which PvP is very quick. I don't personally like it because I feel like it's very unbalanced and I'm not very good at it. And so it takes some practice to get at it. I'm sure it may not be unbalanced as people are saying it is, because people always like to call out things are unbalanced, but that's kind of how it is. And I like the world, so if you're looking for an interesting world, it's definitely one to check out. But if you're like worried about the kind of misogynist sort of grinding that you'll go through, or the you know, uninspired quests, then maybe this might not be your pick, because it does follow those standard kind of rules, and there's not a lot of character customization beyond those soul shields, and some of the abilities kind of transfer into other ones. But the combat can get a little bit samey after a while, which kind of adds to that grind. But I personally find that it's really interesting, and learning enemy attack patterns and things like that is just, it keeps me going. So yeah, a strong recommendation from me. If this would have released years ago, I would have totally been all over this, and this would have been my favorite game for years. But unfortunately, wow, that is a really beautiful scenery. I'm going to go ahead and zoom in. I'm going to hide my UI. That, my friends, is going in the background of my thumbnail. Anyways, this has been Michael, aka Spirit Shard, with Soul, Blade and Soul. Oh wow, I almost screwed up the title on my outro. This has been Michael, aka Spirit Shard, with Blade and Soul. It's a free-to-play MMO that's actually had me really interested. It's got really fun combat, quick action-based. It's got an interesting world. It's kind of grindy-ish. I wish some of the standard stuff wasn't there, as in there's some archaic things they could have gotten rid of, but if this game would have been translated when it released in, you know, other regions, stuff like that, I totally would have been all over it. It would have been a favorite game for years. And, you know, keep note, developers, release your games if they're awesome, because I want to play them. That would be awesome. You know, obviously we're not all going to be fortunate to be able to do that. Obviously, I'm just in awe from this scenery. It's so awesome. Anyways, make sure to like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys in the next video. Also, if you see any other MMOs that are in this style, or other games in this style, I should say, in this kind of setting, make sure to let me know, because this is the first game to where I've played that's in this setting that's actually really good. So, you know, I mean, there's obviously some games that I'm missing there, but yeah, make sure to let me know. Anyways, see you guys in the next video. I'm gonna go jump in that waterfall.